And welcome back to Hannity. There is one scandal that has rocked the Department of Justice with deadly consequences, and that is Operation Fast and Furious. Now, it all began when the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms decided to allow gun stores to sell firearms to straw buyers, people that they knew would funnel those weapons to Mexican drug cartels. Now, the plan was to track the guns and take down the cartels, but thousands of those guns were smuggled into Mexico, where the ATF lost track of them until they turned up at crime scenes, where hundreds of people were killed, including some members of American law enforcement. Now, Fox News' own William LaJeunesse has been following this story from the very beginning.
We weren't giving guns to people who were hunting bear. We were giving guns to people who were killing other humans.
That is insane, inconceivable. You would never think that, because ATF does not do that. If I had known that that was in fact occurring, I would have called ATF headquarters.
Most agents didn't know about Fast and Furious. Those who did followed orders.
It was relayed to me that they didn't have to explain anything to me. I was to do as I was told.
Agent John Dodson blew the whistle after the murder of Border Agent Brian Terry. It ended the program, but not the carnage in Mexico.
Fast and Furious was unique, and here's why. In the past, a suspected straw buyer would be arrested in the parking lot or down the street. But in Fast and Furious, these stores were recruited by the ATF and the U.S. Attorney's Office. Multiple sales were approved, no arrests, and virtually no surveillance outside the store.
When did you first know about the program, officially I believe called Fast and Furious? To the best of your knowledge, what date?
I'm not sure the exact date, but I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
Now, the Attorney General's timeline has since been called into question, and eventually the House of Representatives actually voted to hold him in contempt of Congress for his stonewalling, and this was his response.
Today's vote is the regrettable culmination of what became a misguided and politically motivated investigation during an election year. By advancing it over the past year and a half, Congressman Issa and others have focused on politics over public safety. Instead of trying to correct the problems that led to a series of flawed law enforcement operations, and instead of helping us find ways to better protect the brave law enforcement agents like Agent Brian Terry, who keep us safe, they have led us to this unnecessary and unwarranted outcome.
And joining me now, author, attorney David Limbaugh, and Katie Pavlich. She actually wrote a book about the scandal called, well, what else? Fast and Furious. Thank you both for being with us. Katie, the idea here, and this is almost mind-numbing, our government was getting guns, giving guns to murderers, cartels, kidnappers, drug dealers, and murderers. And they didn't put GPS on them.
Yeah, out of the ATF's argument and DOJ's argument for this program was that they were going to track and trace 2,500 weapons into Mexico, right? But out of 2,500 of those guns, high-powered AK-47s, they put 2 GPS recording devices in them out of 2,500. Now, you do the math on that, but that doesn't sound like a very serious tracking program to me. And the way that the Department of Justice responded to Operation Fast and Furious coming to the surface was what we see all the time in the Obama administration playbook. Blame rogue agents at the local level, even though it was eventually we find out that it's senior level officials in Washington, D.C. ordering and signing off on wiretaps for this. Once they get caught, deny. You have Eric Holder, as you just saw, his timeline's off on when he knew. Memos addressed directly to Attorney General Eric Holder talking about Fast and Furious, and yet he claimed that he knew nothing. And in the end, we still have no answers for the Terry family. And you had just this week the new ATF nomination for the director saying, well, people were held accountable because they retired. Yeah. That's the standard of accountability in the Obama Justice Department, is people retiring out of disciplinary action.
David, you're a fine attorney. Let me ask you a legal question. When he testified before Congress, before he was held in contempt, he said he had just learned about it in the last few weeks. Then documents were uncovered that showed that he knew as early as 10 months earlier, that he knew 10 months earlier. Legally, is that called lying to Congress?
Well, yeah, and
he obviously lied, or he literally is just as absent from his job as Obama apparently is from his, because he was told in memos and emails what was going on, and he disclaimed any knowledge. Sean, can I give you some parallels between what went on with Fast and Furious and what is now going on with the IRS?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about this today. Holder, in that case, lied about lying. He lied in that case, and he denied lying. Same things happened here. He stonewalled in that case. Obama stonewalled, and the administration stonewalled. They blamed it on rogue employees in both cases, Cincinnati here and rogue ATF employees there. They blamed the GOP for a witch hunt. They blamed Bush, Operation Wide Receiver in Fast and Furious. They blamed a Bush appointee on the IRS scandal. The DOJ claimed ignorance like the IRS claimed ignorance. The White House claimed no knowledge, even though we have emails, even though we have proof of conversations with an employee high up in the White House. The Obama administration claims Obama himself claims shock and outrage and pledges that he will hold those responsible accountable, and yet he's done nothing to hold anybody responsible in either case, and blindly approved what Holder did and said, I trust him at his word, even though we have Holder on record as lying in this case. And then whistleblowers in both cases are being punished, and those who have done wrong have been rewarded. We don't know for sure in the IRS, but we see some elevation in some of these cases. So this is a pattern in this administration. I think people ought to recognize it.
Katie, what about that pattern? Because David lays out a pretty strong case there, but they seem to get away with it every time.
Exactly.
No?
Well, and I think this is an indictment of big government, because when you have a government as big as we do now, it's extremely difficult to hold people accountable. And people have asked, well, why hasn't President Obama asked Attorney General Eric Holder to resign after all of these scandals? I mean, Fast and Furious is just one. We have the new Black Panther Party case. We have the latest targeting of James Rosen case, Operation Fast and Furious, which has a body count, I might add. But Holder's been a very good foot soldier politically for the president, and he's not going to go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, David, by the way, that makes a second case in the James Rosen case where he said he didn't know anything about it, and in fact, he signed the affidavit that labeled him a co-conspirator.
And they had the wiretap affidavits, which are required to be in specificity, and the DOJ people claim they didn't read them. Lanny Brewer and the rest. It's so manifestly and obviously a lie that they need to be held to account. Katie did a great job in her book laying this all out.
All right, guys, good to see you both. Appreciate it. And
see you soon.